Wow, here we are again, folks. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. We're going to take a look at the final years of Joseph. Genesis 45 through 50. Read the story of Joseph. If you haven't done it, excuse me, but read the story of Joseph. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. Joseph could secretly believe his eyes, and the word is not secretly there, it is scarcely. He couldn't believe his life when he saw it. At the end of looking back on it, he couldn't believe it. But how could he deny what he saw? There they stood, all 10 of them. How long had it been? His mind quickly flashed back some 23 years to the small Canaanite town of Dothan. You remember, his daddy had sent him to Dothan to see how the battle was going there. And that was the day they sold him into slavery. Watching them now, he felt absolutely no anger but awe, as he thought of the mysterious dream he experienced as a boy. It had probably been the mistake telling them about it. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and beheld your sheaves stood round about, and made obedience to my sheep. In Genesis 37 and 6 through 7. Who would have thought that the dream would be fulfilled under this present circumstance? But here they were shrouded and no doubt somewhat hungry, requesting food in a foreign land, and irony, of course, was they did not realize him. But them, how could they? In their minds, he was either dead or by this time was serving as a slave somewhere. If he hadn't told them his dream, he wouldn't be where he is now. He got where he is now because of their envy and their jealousy and their wicked thoughts of what he had said to them. And so, yeah, his Joseph's life was prescribed by God. You say, well, was it a bad life? No, it wasn't a bad life. Listen, when he was in the prison, he was a king in the prison. Even the guards bowed down to him. Even the guards respected him. I'm sure he had his own place. He dwelt safely in the prison, comfortably. He led people. He was a leader. He led people. He did not follow. He was a leader throughout his life, no matter where he was. Just because he was behind bars did not make him in prison. Prison is a state of mind. You can be behind bars and be in a place and in a state of mind, be comfortable, be doing good, going to school in there. If you are in there, doing good, preaching, telling the story. That's what I did when I was first got saved. I told the story of Jesus where? In the prison house for 7 years. Food in a foreign land. The irony was that they did not recognize him, but how could they? In their minds, he was either dead or be a servant somewhere. Yes, he would reveal himself to them, but not yet. The following few weeks became a nightmare for Joseph's 10 brothers, as they were made to sweat, fret, and forget their past crime. Finally, the agony was over, and the announcement was made. Don't you recognize me? I am Joseph, your youngest brother. Never, never one to harbor a grudge, Joseph would on 2 occasions reassure his brothers still that plagued by guilt. They were plagued by guilt. But Joseph didn't bring that up to them. Now therefore, be not grieved nor angry with yourselves, and yet ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. I love it. Verse 45, chapter 45 and verse 5. Joseph accepted the hand that God dealt him all the way through, from being in the pit, being sold with the slaves, being run out of Potiphar's house, being put in a prison. And by the way, like I said, he was in the prison, but he was not a prisoner. But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Chapter 50 and verse 20. He accepted the fact that God had brought him where he is, brought him through, and so the Lord brought him through where he is, and so that was it, and that's how it worked, and God made it work that way. And that's how God made it work. And that's how it did work. And that's how the Lord wants us to face our life the same way. We ought to face our life the same way. And to come about as God would have us be, what He would have us be, and to be what it is. Let's look at Genesis 45 to 50. What was the subject? The subject was Joseph's life, part 2. Joseph and his brothers. The revealing, I am your forgotten brother. The reassuring, for I am your forgiving brother. How about that? These are the specifics of the chapter. Joseph and his father. Jacob predicts the future of Joseph's sons. They would be famous, and they were. Jacob predicts the future of Joseph himself, that he would be fruitful, and he was. He was a saint. The saint was that Joseph, Jacob, Pharaoh, and Ephraim were all part of the picture. The second part of the picture is the sinner, Manasseh. The sinner, Manasseh. And then let's look at the Old Testament. The king sat and loosed him, even the ruler of the people, and let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler over all his substance, to bind his princes at his pleasure, and to teach his senators wisdom. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. And he increased his people greatly, and made them stronger than their enemies. Psalm 105, 20 and 24. Remember this right here. The son of Ham. Remember, that was the godly line from where? From Noah. That was the godly line from Noah. Let's look in the New Testament now. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshipped, leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel, and gave commandment concerning his bones. In Hebrews chapter 11, 21 and 22. You can take a look at that. And he was the forgiving saint. He forgave everybody and everything that came against him. And we have a tapestry hanging over there in Israel that pictures Joseph as the reigning monarch of the time. And he's unable to contain himself any longer and reveals his identity to his brothers. And after a time of tears, reuniting, Joseph informed them that the 2-year drought they had already experienced would continue another 5 years. Just think, that drought was going to be 7 whole years. Joseph had, by the narrating of God, talked to Pharaoh into allowing him to put enough grain away for 7 years to keep the whole world furnished with food for 7 years. That's their whole known world where they lived for 7 years. And he urged that they bring back Jacob back with them and all make plans to live in Egypt. Joseph reassured his brothers, still in shock, that he had no hard feelings, but felt God had overruled their evil plot in a manner of guarantee that Israel would be a great nation. See, God guaranteed Israel to be a great nation. If Joseph hadn't been in where Pharaoh is, Israel would have died. They would have perished out. There would have been no more Israel. There would have been no more people. They all would have died. Many, many people during that period of time died out with famine. Pharaoh rejoiced along with Joseph over his restored brothers and also invited the entire clan to live in Egypt. Wow. Here is the enemy of Israel saying, come on, bring all of your brethren, bring all of the Jews, bring them all, and put them over here, and I'll take care of you, I'll feed you. You don't have to do anything. And Joseph and his brothers, at first, the old patriot Jacob, could not comprehend the thrilling news concerning Joseph. But then he believed the report and planned his trip to Egypt. En route at Beersheba, God reassured Jacob that he would still bless him, even in Egypt. Jacob was told that he was to die there, but that God would someday bring his descendants back to Palestine. And God spake unto Israel in the vision of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of thy fathers. Fear not to go down unto Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee unto Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. 46 and 2 through 4. Jacob entered Egypt with his entire household, and Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen, and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. Verses 29 through 30. The population of Israel in Goshen expanded rapidly in spite of the famine everywhere else. At the age of 147, Jacob realized his time was near and called for his beloved son Joseph and his favorite grandson Ephraim and Manasseh. Remember those two guys, Ephraim and Manasseh, now are the godly line that are fixing to bring things to come to pass. So Joseph promised his father that he would not be buried in Egypt. Joseph and his son Joseph's two sons stood before his grandfather, waiting for his blessing. And the old man adopted them as his own sons and assured them of equal inheritance. Now, here is two guys God has brought in to the family, Joseph's family, and guaranteed them that they would be in the fruitful line of those Israelites. And Joseph received his father's blessing. See also Hebrews 11:21. Joseph is a fruitful bough, and a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. And you know something? You'd have to be by a well in order to have branches that run over the wall. Well, the well was God, and the branches were those patriots, those Christian people that followed God. And he blessed Joseph and said, God before whom my father Abraham, Isaac, did worship, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lands, and let my name be named on them that name of my father Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Chapters 48:15-16. Jacob gathered his 12 sons around beside him just before his death, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Chapter 49:1. Jacob then predicted the future of each of the 12 sons. Especially interesting is his prophecy concerning Judah and his tribe. Verses 8-12. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him all the gathering of the people be. Verse 10. The other brothers were to praise Judah and bow before him. Judah would destroy his enemies and would be left undisturbed like a young lion. The scepter would not depart from Judah until Shiloh, that's Christ, cometh. See Numbers 24:17 and Revelations 5:50. Compare those two and see where Shiloh came in. This was Jesus Christ. He was called Shiloh. Look up the word. And the house of bread. And Joseph and his father's body. Jacob died at the age of 147, and his body was embalmed in Egypt during the 40-day preparation period. All Egypt mourned over him for 70 days. He was carried by his son into Palestine and buried alongside Abraham and Isaac and in the cave of Machpelah. Joseph reassured his troubled brothers that favorable conditions would remain as before the funeral. He gently reminded them, ye thought evil against me, but God thought it for good. Wow. And it bring to pass as this day to save much people alive. Genesis chapter 50 verse 20. Joseph died at the age of 110 years old. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died at 110 years old, and they embalmed him and was put in a coffin in Egypt. 24-26. The foreshadow of Joseph to the most complete type of Christ in all the Bible. Note the amazing similarities between these two. Both were beloved of their Father. 37:3 and Matthew 3:17. Both were regarded themselves as shepherds. Genesis 37:2 and John 10:11 through 14. Both were sent to their brethren by their Father. Genesis 37:13 to 14, Luke 20:13, John 3:17, Hebrews 10:7 and 19. Both were hated by their brethren without a cause. Genesis 37:4-7, John 1:11. Both were plotted against by their brethren. Genesis 37:20, John 11:53. There's Joseph and Jesus. Both were severely tempted. Genesis 39:7 and Matthew 4. You remember, Joseph was tempted by Potiphar's wife, and Jesus was tempted by the devil. He said, turn these stones into bread and eat one of them. Both were taken to Egypt. Genesis 37:28. Remember, Matthew 2:14 and 15, Jesus was taken to Egypt. Both were stripped of their robes. Genesis 37:23 and John 19:23 and 4. Remember, Joseph's robe was taken off of him. He was stripped by his brothers, and they parted the robe. Both were sold for a piece of silver. Joseph in Genesis 37:23 and Jesus in Matthew 26:15. Both were bound. Genesis 39:20 was Joseph, and in Matthew 27:2 was Jesus. Both remained silent and offered no defense. Genesis 39:20. Joseph said, "Okay, I'm ready to go." Isaiah 53:7 was Jesus. Both were falsely accused. Genesis 39 and Matthew 26:59. Both experienced God's providence through everything. Genesis 39:2 through 21:23, and in John 1:32. Both were replaced by their captives. Genesis 39:21 and Luke 23:47. Both were placed with two prisoners, one of which was later lost and one of which was saved. Genesis 42 and 3, 21:22, Luke 23:32, 39 through 43. Both were about 30 when they ministries began. And can't see, my glasses slid down. Genesis 41:36 to Luke 2:23. Both were highly exalted after the suffering. Genesis 41:41, Philippians 2:19-11. Both took Gentile bribes. Genesis 41, Ephesians 3:1 through 2. Both were lost to their brothers for a while. Genesis 42:7 and 8, Romans 10:1 through 3. Both forgave and restored their penitent brothers. Genesis 45:1 through 15, Micah 7 something, Zechariah 2:10 through 12. Both were visited and honored by an earthly nation. Genesis 41:57, Isaiah 2:3 through 4. These two guys had the similarities that God put on them. Because Jesus was the Son of God, but he went through the fleshly things that Joseph went through. And Joseph was under the royal hand of God throughout his life. He was never in misery. He was never a captive of his mind. His heart was always free. His mind was always free. He never was a captive of Satan. He was a captive of God. and the host of God. And jail was just another place to preach. Prison was just another place to live for a while. And he lived comfortably there. He didn't live in misery or hardship or anything. He lived comfortably there. He was exalted to a high position. And there the jailer said, "Here, you just run this place, I'll watch." And he did. And he made it a good place to live for those guys. And by the way, the majority of those that were in jail in that day were the crime was just not acting according to what the king said. They didn't really necessarily have to be bad people to be in jail. They just didn't obey what the king said. Well, our time's come and gone, and we will see you next time with Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. This has been one of the best stories I ever studied in my whole life since I've been saved. We'll see you next time, right? Bye-bye.